Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown, where we affirm the inherent worthiness and dignity of every person, and where we support each other on our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Rev Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you have joined us this morning. Welcome to those of you in the room, especially my dad. And welcome also to those of you joining us via our live stream. Before we begin our worship service, I have just a few announcements to share. A big thank you to Andrew Brown, who is our guest choir conductor today. He will be leading the choir and singing one of my favorite songs, which the choir sang at my installation in 2012, so I'm very excited about that. Andrew is also a very talented tenor, and you can catch him tonight at the Great Music on Sundays at 5 concert, which is entitled Queer Voices Through the Centuries, music of Handel, Heggie, Britten, and Poulenc. We hope that you can come back for that tonight at 5. And a reminder that on Wednesday, August 21st, we will have a concert and UU Meetinghouse fundraiser by Tom Wilson Weinberg downstairs in AB Hall at 5 p.m. This is going to be a terrific cabaret-style show, and we hope that you can come and bring friends. All the proceeds will go to support the Meetinghouse, which is so generous of Tom. Please also let me know if you can volunteer that evening to welcome people and take donations. We want to thank the youth and advisors at Camp Firefly, a summer camp for LGBTQ identifying youth led by the YMCA. These campers have come to the Meetinghouse for the past 2 weeks to learn about our food pantry and to help stock it under the guidance of 2 of our pantry volunteers, Vicki and Liz. It was such a joy to meet the kids and to see them engage with our food pantry ministry, as well as answer some questions about what a welcoming and affirming faith community looks like. And our pantry volunteers, speaking of that, tell us that we are running low on canned vegetables, canned soup, Chef Boyardee cups, dry beans, and canned fruit. So if you can make us a part of your next grocery run, we always appreciate that. If you are attending in person today, we hope that you will stay for a little while after the service for coffee and conversation, either downstairs in Acker Bosworth Hall or out on our lawn. We've put up a shade tent for you today, so please stick around. And finally, I want to thank you so much for these beautiful flowers and the lovely note cards that I have been receiving all week. They have absolutely made my day and my month, and I especially thank Lorraine and Stan, who I think masterminded this outpouring of love. Stan and Lorraine were on the search committee that led me here in August 2012, and I am so thankful to them both and to the other members of that committee, Denny Klass, who has moved away, and Roger Chauvette and Cricket Comey, who have both now passed away. Now, you might think that celebrating the completion of 12 years is a kind of odd anniversary to be excited about, but the reason I am so happy to mark this month, which begins my 13th year with you, is that our ministry together is now the longest ministry in the history of this meeting house since 1829. We are still growing strong together, and I think that's something that we should all be really proud of. And of course, there are some community ministers who have been here much longer than me, and it is in part because of them that I feel so supported here. And so I also thank Pastor Brenda Haywood and Reverend Bill Clark. Let's take a moment now to affirm our Meeting House covenant. You can find that printed on the purple laminated cards in your pews. I'm going to say it line by line, so you can just repeat each line back to me. Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
This is our great covenant.
This is our great covenant.
To dwell together in peace.
To dwell together in peace.
To seek the truth in love.
To seek the truth in love.
And to help one another. Now, as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you who are joining us from home to light a candle wherever you are. In that way, we can feel connected even while we are apart. And I invite our worship host, Shar and Ken, to light our chalice this morning.
Good morning. Our chalice lighting words this morning are by Sarah Ruth Wakoye Davis. It's called Opening to the Light. We light this chalice with an open heart. We light this chalice with resolve. We light this chalice with tears still fresh on our cheeks. We light this chalice in hope, a tiny flame we nurture. We light this chalice with reverence for this place, for these people, for this time. We light this chalice with all our souls, longing to be who we are, to be who we will become, to be ourselves. We light this chalice in self-love, in giving love, in holy love.
Won't you please join me now in singing our opening hymn, number 347, in these gray hymnals, Singing the Living Tradition. That's hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. Please rise as you are able.
All
You may be seated. Please join me now in a time of meditation and prayer. During this time or any time during the service, you are welcome to light a silent candle at the table to the right of the pulpit, where there is a journal to record your thoughts and prayers. After the prayer, we will sing together Spirit of Life, hymn number 123. You can also find the words to this song on the purple laminated cards in your pews. Might be tucked under your hymnals at the edge. We'll sing first in English and then in Spanish. And our prayer this morning is by Ann Mason. Spirit of life, your very presence among us is what gives us strength and connection. Help us to sense that beneath our feet is the strength we need to keep us grounded. Help us to feel that behind our back is the protection we need to feel safe facing our fears. Help us to know that before our eyes lies the beauty we seek to feel astounded. Help us to lift our heads high enough to be aware of the vastness of our sky and of our spirit. And help us to know that within our hearts lies the love we need to complete the circle of connection in our lives. We are grateful, Spirit of love, for this day. May we use all of these gifts, our feet, our backs, our eyes, our heads, and our hearts, to bring love into this hurting world, this world we so value and cherish. Amen.
I just want to say that that blessing we just sang sounded beautiful. Today's reading is called Calling by Nancy Schaefer. When you heard that voice you knew, finally, it called for you, and what it was saying, where were you? Were you in the shower, wet and soapy? Or chopping cabbage? Late for dinner? Were you planting radish seeds or seeking one lost sock? Maybe wiping handprints off a window? Or coaxing words into a sentence? Or coming upon a hyacinth? Or one last no? Where were you when you heard that ancient voice? And did yes get born right then? And did you weep? Had it called you since before you even were? And when you knew that, did your joy escape all holding? Where were you when you heard that calling voice? And how, in the moment, did you mark it? How ever after are you changed? Tell us, please, all you can about that voice. Tell us how to listen, how to hear. Teach us all you can of saying yes.
Now is the time when we take a collection for the ongoing support of this Meetinghouse and our shared ministry. As we enjoy our musical reflection by our choir, we welcome your donations here in the sanctuary or online through PayPal or Venmo. You can find that information on our website, uumh.org. At this point, I invite Augie and 2 other volunteer ushers forward to take up our collection. On and off site, your offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you, choir. Where were you when you heard that calling voice? And how, in the moment, did you mark it? I knew that I had said yes to you when, during the search process, I spontaneously went onto Craigslist and found a man in South Attleboro selling 2 used kayaks from his house. On the phone, he said he'd had other offers, and if I really wanted them, I would have to come right then. Yes, I said, I'll be there. Hanging up the phone, the difficulty of the logistics of this purchase began to surface. How on earth would I fit 2 kayaks into my little Honda Civic? And where exactly was I going to put 2 full-sized kayaks in my landlocked second-floor Boston apartment? But I couldn't back out now. These 2 kayaks had quickly become symbolic of a much larger yes. Yes to taking a risk. Yes to the exciting and excruciating invitation to spend a week getting to know you and then be voted on at the end. Yes to leaving my inner city social justice ministry for a quirky, lovable parish on the outermost tip of Cape Cod. Yes to following my heart. But once you have said yes, it's amazing how the details seem to work themselves out. I drove from Boston to Plymouth, where I picked up my father's truck, and a companion for the drive, my mother, ever ready for an adventure. South Attleboro was a little farther than I thought. It's basically Rhode Island. But we persevered even as darkness began to fall and my GPS guided us off of the main roads and onto tiny back roads with no street lamps. I chatted cheerfully at my mother, not wanting to look at her, in case I might find her face giving expression to the thoughts I was beginning to have. Mainly, whose idea was this? But finally, we arrived at our destination, and in the darkness, I could just make out the shadows of 2 sleek Emotion Glide kayaks lying in the front yard as if in a quiet harbor. My yes swelled up in my heart again. The seller helped us hoist the boats into the truck and secure them with bungee cords, and we began to retrace our steps in reverse in the darkness. An hour and a half later, we were lugging the kayaks off the truck and into my mother's shed, where she had graciously agreed to store them for an unspecified amount of time. Further logistics of actually securing the job and then Cape Cod housing in the height of summer would come later. I returned the truck and then, back in my little Civic, turned north toward Boston. But already my heart was east, across the bay, where on a very clear day you can see the monument in Provincetown from my uncle's porch on Plymouth Beach. Driving home, I knew my yes would keep. Tell us, please, all you can about that voice. Teach us how to listen, how to hear. Teach us all you can of saying yes. As I celebrate 12 years with you and with those trusty kayaks, I have gotten a lot of pleasure out of them. I've been thinking a lot about that first yes. How I said yes to you and you said yes to me, and how we were at the very beginning of something with so much anticipation and excitement. But I remember that it was also a time of many mixed emotions, because saying yes also meant saying goodbye to my other life, to my apartment, and being close to my friends and the city, and leaving the kids that I worked with every day at the UU Urban Ministry. It also meant asking Lisa to say yes and leave her life behind to join me. So often, saying yes to one thing means saying no or goodbye to another thing. I know that those of you who have said yes to retirement or to moving or to another big life change know what I am talking about. And I've also been thinking about all of the yeses that we have said to each other since then, and all of the yeses that each of us need to say all the time in order to embrace our life, to embrace change, getting closer to who we are at our core. And I've been thinking about all the things we have to say goodbye to in order to say those yeses, which includes our doubts, our insecurities, our old ways, our defaults. It's a leap of faith to say yes. On my first Sunday with you, I said, I am just beginning to get to know and love you here, but I do know that each of you are also being called to say yes, although I do not know what is calling each of you, or what goodbyes you might have to say in order to say yes, or what might be waiting for you on the other side. And then I told the story of Christy Hardwick, a member of this congregation, who told me back then that saying yes to the life she wanted meant saying goodbye to stuff. She said, for decades, I had toiled under the assumption that more was better. More money, more things, and bigger experiences. The more I achieved, the more I felt I had to achieve. At one point, she said, I recognized that all my work and focus on the outside was making little difference to how I felt on the inside. Success, money, and what looked like a good life left Christy feeling bereft instead of inspired or exhilarated. She focused on doing what she thought was right and necessary for her 3 children rather than herself. And then one day, she looked at herself in the mirror and realized that she needed a life that would make her happy. She said, this spiritual awakening, beginning with the understanding that I could author a new life and that my doing so was good for everyone concerned, began a love affair with the inner life that has been growing and deepening for more than a decade. When I told the truth to myself and my family, she said, that I did not any longer care to have a lot, but that I had a desire for freedom, we were able to say yes to selling off property in California, even for a loss, and settle into the smallest house any of us had ever been in. Christy said goodbye to her big life in California and yes to her tiny house in Provincetown, and she was happy there. In this tiny house that was across the street from a spectacular view and around the corner from the breakwater where she got to watch people clamming, even in the winter. When Christy said yes to this move, I think it was because she had finally experienced the joy that following her heart could bring. And this joy first came when she said yes to marrying her wife, Jane. Before I met Jane, she said, I was married twice, and both times I was outside the church crying, but went ahead and did it anyway. There was no yes in my body for those marriages, but I denied my inner prompting and did what I thought I should want to do. Christy says, when Jane and I married here on the beach, I was singing all the way to her hand in mine. I said yes to my inner knowing that this was the right life for me. Where were you when you heard that ancient voice? And did yes get born right then? And did you weep? Christy's daughter once said to her at a family gathering after that move, Mom, you are so much happier than you have ever been before. And Christy smiled, thinking, yes. Now, of course, she has said yes to other things since then. Yes to moving away from Provincetown. Yes to selling her next house and living out of a tiny RV as she and Jane drove across the country multiple times. Yes to writing a book. But lest you think this saying yes stuff is only about big life choices like moving across the country, getting rid of all your belongings, and coming out, let me share with you another story. This one comes from my friend Catherine. She said, my boyfriend and I lived only 4 miles apart, a 20-minute bike ride between Jamaica Plain and Cambridge, but 45 minutes on public transportation. An avid urban biker from Chicago, he had been encouraging me to get a bike, she said. The freedom to come and go as one pleases and not wait on a bus. Exercise, fresh air. What could possibly be the downside, he argued. Now, the problem was that biking touched on a couple of deeper fears for Catherine. She has a terrible sense of direction. She's a bit clumsy, and she's very self-conscious about her appearance. For years, this self-consciousness about how she would look, are all those cars watching my rear end try to balance on this bike? And physical strength, what if I reach a hill? Kept her terrified with both feet on the ground. But the idea of freedom and fun was exciting to her, and the boyfriend promised to teach her. So she decided to bite the bullet and said yes to biking. She brought her bike from the 8th grade from North Carolina to Boston. As it turns out, the bicycle had more longevity than the boyfriend. 5 months later, after only 4 or 5 rides together, that relationship had ended. I was just starting to get the hang of it, Catherine said, and I could do one route that felt familiar, but mostly I was terrified of biking alone. Traffic was scary, roads were narrow. This was a dumb idea, for sure. But there is something else that you should know about my friend Catherine. Now, some of you have met her by now. She and I are the ones who used to wear matching outfits for carnival and drag bingo. Besides the clumsiness and the self-doubt, Catherine does not like to be defeated. Now, the problem was that something had gone wrong with the bicycle, and Catherine had no idea how to fix it. So she took the bike to the shop across the street, owned by, in her words, intimidating JP hipsters. And she got through with the words, "I got my bicycle because my boyfriend wanted me to ride with him and we broke up," before she started crying. Through her tears, she continued, "Now there's something wrong with it and it won't work at all and I have no idea what to do." They stared at her. Mostly, she says, to avoid dealing with the impending emotional breakdown, they looked at the bike right away. Turns out the bike, broken beyond all repair in Catherine's mind, had lost its chain. One of the intimidating hipsters fixed it in about 5 seconds and said, "Hey, it's gonna be okay. No charge. Just keep riding." And that is what she did. She was scared that first ride out alone. She got off the bike at each intersection and walked the bike across. But she was doing it. "I was terrified," she said, "but I also felt so free and brave." When she got home that day, she had another cry. She was proud of herself, but so sad too. Was this life, she wondered? Having to make huge leaps alone when things didn't go the way you had anticipated? Feeling like most things in life are a combination of, "Oh my God, this is terrifying," and "My God, I'm amazing." Being sad and wondering if she would be okay by herself. But in that deep cry was also the comfort of knowing that if she could learn to bike alone, then she could face greater fears too. Looking back, she said, saying yes to the bike changed my life forever and for the better. When I thought about this story and saying yes, she said, I said yes to one thing, but it turned out to be this whole other experience. I thought I was saying yes to riding a bike with my boyfriend. I love my bike now because it gives me freedom. I feel strong and capable when I ride, and even when I fall off, I have learned to give myself more grace. We can't know how anything will go, she says, but it's so good to be able to trust and love yourself enough to try. I recently rewatched Jim Carrey's 2008 movie, Yes Man. If you haven't seen it, the premise is that 3 years after his bitter divorce, Carrey's character Carl has fallen into the habit of saying no to everything. No to social events with friends, no to small business loan applications at his work, even no to a promotion because he didn't want to commit or be tied down. He's full of excuses. I'll be out of town. There's a lot going on right now at work. Geez, I wish I could, but I can't. Once we have gotten the picture about his glum outlook on life, we are introduced to another character, an old friend of Carl's who invites him to a yes seminar. Of course, Carl says no. But then the friend says, Carl, live your life. You won't regret it. So he decides to go to the seminar. Now, the charismatic seminar leader tells the crowd, when you say yes to things, you embrace the possible. Then he picks a member out of the audience to work with one-on-one in front of the group. Of course, it's Carl. And of course, he says, no thank you to this opportunity. But the leader prevails, and he gives Carl a challenge. Actually, he convinces him to make a covenant that from that moment on, Carl will say yes to every request, invitation, and opportunity that comes his way. And thus the plot of the movie comes to life. As he exits the conference, a homeless man asks him for a ride, and then to borrow his phone, and then for money, all his money. Carl grudgingly agrees. Carl runs out of gas giving the homeless man a ride and cannot call AAA because his phone battery has died from all the calls this man has been making. After a long walk to the gas station, a young woman offers him a ride back to his car on her motorcycle. Terrified, Carl says yes. When his boss calls him in to work on a Saturday, Carl says yes, and also begins approving all kinds of microloans, which impresses the bosses and earns Carl a promotion, which he says yes to. Soon he is learning to play the guitar, volunteering with the homeless, and taking Korean classes. This being a Jim Carrey film, of course, some of the things Carl says yes to are wildly inappropriate, but I won't dwell on those. Carl is enjoying life so much more now, but he's also becoming kind of a maniac and getting very little sleep. His new girlfriend, you guessed it, it's the girl with the motorcycle, can't tell if Carl really loves her or if he just had to say yes to being with her because of the crazy yes covenant. Desperate, Carl goes to find the leader of the yes seminar again. The man can't believe that Carl is still saying yes to everything. It was just an exercise, he explains, not a lifelong covenant. In the end, says the seminar leader, you're saying yes not because you have to, but because your heart tells you to. Not because you have to, but because your heart tells you to. Perhaps we could take a spiritual lesson from Carl and his covenant to say yes. I'm not asking you to say yes to everything. I've seen that movie. I'm challenging you to listen for what your heart is telling you to say yes to. I'm challenging you to remind yourself daily that it is the things we say yes to and not our no's that give shape to our life. I can't believe that 12 years have passed since I first said yes to you, and I'm so glad that I did. And I'm so glad that you said yes to me, not just that first time, but all the times since. You've said yes to me when I've presented new ideas or asked you if it might be time to let go of some old ones. You've said yes when I asked you to volunteer or to serve on a committee. You said yes to a winter spirituality series, and yes to our Black Lives Matter banner, and yes to becoming a sanctuary for undocumented people. Yes to partnering with other churches and communities of faith in town. Yes, when I asked you to help us love and take care of our foster children when we were foster parents. Yes to moving online when the pandemic hit. And yes to opening back up slowly, even though we were scared. Yes to Zoom coffee hours and drive-through water communions. Yes to starting a little free pantry on our grounds. Yes to showing up for vigils and protests. You said yes when I was ready for a sabbatical. You said yes to me when I had to go on medical leave. and again when I came back and told you that I was not 100% yet. You said yes when I told you about my new disability and that I was going to show up differently sometimes. You said yes, come as you are. And that is what I have been doing for 12 years, and that is what I invite you to do as we enter our 13th year together of shared ministry. I think Catherine said it best when she said, saying yes, for me at least, means saying yes over and over again. Where were you when you heard that calling voice? And how in the moment did you mark it? How ever after are you changed? Amen, and blessed be. Stay standing if you are able. Thank you. Won't you join me in singing our closing hymn? Number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath in these gray hymnals. Thank you. You may be seated.
It has become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the service each week. It can be a topic of sharing at coffee hour today or with friends during the week. And if you'd like to delve deeper into this topic, we invite you to our midweek Zoom coffee hour on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Please let Kenneth in the office know if you need that link. Our question this week is, what are you being called to say yes to in this season of your life? What are you being called to say yes to in this season of your life?
As we go out into the world today, may our spirits open to follow the yes of our hearts. I'm not asking you to say yes to everything, but maybe we could each say yes to at least one thing today that we might have reflexively said no to, and see where it leads. Go in peace.